Раді вас бачити.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We are glad to see you here, and now we are having the press briefing, and Colonel Oleksandr Motuzyanyk will share his information about the last events in NATO area. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Let's start our briefing. Today we have a year being involved in a terrorist operation against arrogant attack by Russia and their proxies in eastern Ukraine. Despite the enemy forces and lack of any principles, we stood the hardest moment after the dignity revolution. Now, due to the army forces and our volunteers and patriots, Ukraine is united and its army is one of the most potent in Europe. The entire world understands the threat of Russian aggression, and we are aimed at developing our country, being supported by the entire world. The Russia-backed militants continued provocation against our armed forces, even during the Easter celebrations in the last 24 years. They used the weaponry banned by Minsk agreements in Donetsk and Mariupol proximities. There were 9 shelling by ATO with 120 millimeters mortars and 8 shelling by 122 millimeters artillery. We have also observed 4 tank attacks. The hottest spots have been the points close to Donetsk airport, first of all, Pisky, Opytne, Vodene, Avdiivka. In Lugansk region, the Ukrainian formations have been shelled in the proximity of Novotoshkinsk and Trokhizbenka. There was a combat engagement in Avdiivka region where the Ukrainian servicemen retaliated the occupants. After the brief period of rest, the combat continued in Shirokine near Mariupol. The militants performed 8 attacks on the National Guard of Ukraine blockposts with the use of mortars, grenade launchers, small arms and tanks. There are also international observers from OSCE SMM, and according to their report, illegal armed groups launched at least 49 projectiles and used 122 millimeter artillery against the Ukrainian forces. The militants not only arrogantly violated the ceasefire, but also rejected to the SMM monitors in Shirokina. The chief of OSCE SMM, Ambassador Tigru Lepakan, already has drawn the attention to blatant violations of the Minsk package by pro-Russia gangs, and I would like to stress that Ukraine strictly adheres to Minsk agreements, and our servicemen fire only in case of direct threat to their lives. During the last 24 hours, the Ukrainian forces observed 21 drones along the delimitation line. 1 serviceman was killed in action and 6 got wounded. At the background of the militants' provocation, Russian Federation is accumulating the next false humanitarian convoy. According to their information, 24th column is going to bring so-called humanitarian aid to Ukraine, and I'd like to stress that the militants always became more active immediately after arrival of such Russian convoys. There are still internal tension, and so-called LPR units engage in fire exchange with so-called pro-Russian Kazakhs to redistribute the influence areas in occupied districts in Lugansk region. The Ukrainian special forces block funding channels for militants. The Ukrainian special service detained the train in Popasnya district transporting over 100,000 tons of ammonium sulfates from temporarily occupied territories to sell the raw materials and to pay the LPR gangman. During our law enforcers' alertness, it has been blocked. The soldiers of ATO are celebrating the Easter. Being faithful to traditions, they celebrated the Orthodox Easter. Priests visited the servicemen in the front line and they prayed together for peace in Ukraine. The local civilians celebrated the Easter together with the servicemen. The ceremonies were held also in Kramatorsk, and the priests and military chaplains blessed Easter eggs and Easter cakes delivered to the front line on behalf of thankful Ukrainians. The international community supports Ukraine and aims at a peaceful settlement of the Donbas conflict. Foreign ministers of Ukraine, Germany, France, and Russia will meet in Berlin today to discuss further fulfillment of Minsk agreements and eventual bringing of the peacekeepers to Donbas. At the same time, the entire world has no illusion about the initiator of Eastern Ukraine conflict. For instance, PACE Ministers' Committee Chairman Didier Reynders stated that PACE is not going to give back the voting right to Russia before they have seen any progress in implementation of settlement agreements, and the attitude is hardly likely to change this year. Are there any questions, please? Sorry for speaking Russian. We had the information for 2 days, for 2 weeks, that there is a Lebanese group who is supporting the terrorists. Sorry, I couldn't understand your question completely, and let us meet afterwards. Fifth channel, do you have any information about the reporter being apparently killed nearby the Donetsk airport? We are checking this information, and as soon as we are sure, we'll inform you. If there is no more questions, thank you, Colonel Motuzyanyk, for the briefing, and tomorrow we'll meet here at 9 o'clock. Thank you and goodbye.